I'm here with author, sci-fi and fantasy author, Anthony Pavelich. I'm Sam Dubé, via Skype from Ottawa to Mississauga and back due to the worldwide COVID-19 pandemic. Anthony, you've written a wonderful book for us called The World Unraveled, Book 1 of the Scorched Earth Saga. Can you tell us about your book?
So the book is actually based in a fantasy world. Think dragons and magic and medieval times type world. Now there's a little bit difference just because I've put a little bit of modern twist to one of the kingdoms based on the ability to have running water and stuff like that. But the lead is a young man, he's a young man, 18, 19 years old. He's just discovering his magic abilities by finding out that his father is actually alive, that he thought was dead. So the World Unraveled is basically, I chose that title. It has a dual purpose because his world is becoming unraveled, but then so is everybody else's because of what they discover has been hidden for 100 years by the kingdoms and from how they became who they are now. And you probably hear my chihuahua in the background thinking he's all big and bad.
He's pent up right now because of the pandemic, eh?
Yeah, well, I've got two larger dogs that are in their room, and he always likes to bark and get them started, or either bark at whatever they're barking at, even though he doesn't know what they're barking at.
Okay. So what makes your book, The World Unraveled, unique in its genre?
Well, the lead is gay, but in the world it doesn't. It's a world where that's not a big deal. It's not anything that, unlike ours that we live in right now, a lot of times. So I wanted to make it to where it's a norm that people, it's not. You don't know. I mean, it's not like everybody's like, oh, you grow up and it's like they're pinpointed whether they're gay or straight or bi or whatever in the book. But it's just, oh, okay, so he's not attracted to me, he's attracted to him, if it's a woman, Right. So, and I just wanted it to be a non-factor. Because I think that's kind of the way it should be. And I didn't want the focus to be on his sexuality in the book. Like everybody coming to terms with his sexuality, I wanted the focus to be on his journey, discovering his abilities and understanding what he's doing, what he has to do for the world. Okay.
Can you tell us a little bit more about his journey without giving away spoilers?
Oh, without giving spoilers. Okay. Well, it starts out with him hearing a voice in his dreams, which he doesn't know who that voice is or what the voice is. You'll discover the voice towards the end of the book. And then he finds out from a friend of his father's that his father is still alive, which his mother, you determine that his mother knows that his father's alive, but it was best to let him believe that he had died. And then a gift that his mother gives him from his father puts him on his journey towards understanding his abilities and determining whether he lives his life as he wants or whether he lives his life as he's destined.
Okay. And for our viewership, can you tell us how we would obtain a copy of your book? Do you have a website that you can give us as well?
I have a website, Cruconia.com. Cruconia, C-R-U-O-N, Cruconia, C-R-U-C-O-N-I-A,
Okay.
Cruconia.com. And that is actually a website that you can purchase the book if you want to get a signed author's copy. But you can also purchase it on Amazon. It's out on Kobo. You can get a Kindle version or a printed version. And there's a few other websites. I know my niece went to buy it, and she looked it up, and you could order it through Barnes & Noble. So.
And what does it retail for, Anthony?
US $9.99.
US $9.99
for the printed. Yeah.
For Canadian $250.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, depending on how the world goes, it might be true, but yeah, and it fluctuates. So it's like $13, $12.50 Canadian.
tell us a little bit about your personal journey writing The World Unraveled.
So I've started writing many different books throughout the last couple of decades. I've always wanted to write a book. I've had a few stories that have actually come and gone through my head. I've started out a couple paragraphs in the first chapter, maybe some notes. But this one, for some reason, when it came to me, I actually know how the journey is ending. So I know what was originally going to be 3 books. I know the ending of the 3rd book. But now it's 4 books because of what I've changed in the 2nd book. So, because I'm in the middle of writing the 2nd book. So there's going to be a 3rd book in between what I had originally planned, which is going to be kind of a flashback. So it's kind of a journey of understanding who you are and who you're meant to be and incorporating with who you want to be into all that. Just a little, this doesn't have to do it doesn't involve in the story, but I've been in recovery for over 11 years. And it kind of goes along with what I thought, and I decided when I went into recovery, is that you have a lot of people who go into recovery and they make that their life. It takes over their life. They do nothing outside of being with people in recovery, which is fine and it's perfect, and a lot of people have to deal with that. But I decided that it was going to be part of me, it wasn't going to be me. And so that's kind of what the lead, Gavin, is going through. He's got to determine what's going to take him over and what's going to be part of him, and how he's going to incorporate everything into what he's meant to be and where he's going.
Okay, so it sounds like all 4 books are mapped out. There was a change somewhere in between, and you know how it all ends. Are you working on anything else? A sequel series, a companion series, any other characters that are developed in your...
Every time I write something, I come up with an idea. I've got a prequel series in mind for Gavin's father already. There is 2 separate elf worlds, not worlds, but elf people in the book. You've got the Red Lake elves and you've got the Yellow Mist Forest elves. They're basically cousin elves, and I've started kind of thinking of a book to explain why, because you'll discover in the 2nd book, and this is kind of given away, that they don't really talk about each other that much. So there's a friction there that I've been thinking of a book to explain that friction. And then this just pops up. I've got like 3 or 4 other books that in the middle of the night I come up with an idea and I have to get up and write it down. But yeah, so the main thing is, I think after this book would be the prequel with his father.
Yeah, that sounds intriguing, actually. Now, Anthony, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe what experiences helped shape you and your journey toward this book?
I think the biggest journey I've had and the biggest thing that shaped me, and one of my favorite authors, is Raymond D. Feist. And I've read his whole series from start to beginning that he had, starting with the Rift War Saga and Magician. I think his first book was called Magician, which was broken up into 2 separate books. And that kind of solidified my full interest in this genre. And that's kind of where my basis of wanting to write came from. But also, I also wanted to incorporate part of deleting society norms as expected when it comes to this genre, and just letting the world be the world and letting people be people. So I know if you think back, I don't know if you heard that when J.K. Rowling announced that Dumbledore was gay.
Yes. And
the backlash that came from all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want that kind of backlash. Right. I'm not saying I'm ever going to be a J.K. Rowling. I mean, that'd be great. But, it wasn't meant to have anything that was hidden or anything that was just like suggested at us. It just is. And I wanted to be able to put that part of my desire into the book.
And
I think that's what helped with this. I think that's what helped with this, coming up with this idea, was realizing that, okay, this is who he's going to be. And then it, as his backstory started happening in my head and all that, then I'm like, yeah, this is going to, and then I knew how it was going to end and why he was who he was. And I think that's how I was able to come up with the ending of the book.
Yeah, because you said
the series.
Yeah, you came up with that first, you said.
Well, I came up with the idea, and I knew I wanted to start it, but then, before I even finished, the first chapter or two, I knew how the series would end. And I think that's where I was able to know that this is what I want to write. This is the story that I want to tell.
Authors sometimes project themselves onto their protagonists or even anti-heroes. Is there a lot of you in Gavin, and vice versa?
It's funny because I have somebody who said that they see a lot of me in Gavin. I never saw a lot of me in Gavin, but I think there is some part of me in Gavin to where he wants to make a difference, and he wants people to be happy, and he wants people to he wants to please so many people at the same time, and he has a problem with that.
You mentioned, sorry, go ahead.
So that's something that he will end up having to resolve at some point.
So you mentioned themes of self-discovery and self-acceptance. What other themes are present in your book and your book series?
I think that his best friend ends up playing a larger role than I had originally planned. So I think it's, acceptance of others is going to be a big theme, because where his best friend's journey, he's been friends with Jack since they were kids. And his best friend is going on a different journey than Gavin is. So they're going to end up clashing at some point, but they're also going to end up having to accept each other for who they are. So it's accepting, you have to accept that everybody's journey is different.
Right. Now, do you have a target audience for your book, and an ideal target audience? And if so, who are they, and how would they benefit from reading your book? I think I try not to do too targeted of an audience for it, just because I want people to read this. I want the LGBT community to be able to read this and understand that, it can be okay to be yourself. But I also want just people that are interested in the genre to be able to read it and to be able to understand that, it's not all about who the person necessarily is personally, but what they can teach somebody, and what, how everybody's journey is going to take them in a way to either where they're destined and they can ignore what they want, or they can incorporate their destiny into what they want and have a good fulfilled life. And I think that's where Gavin's going to struggle, is being able to have a fulfilled life, understanding after he realizes who he is fully and who he wants to be. His love life is another thing that, his life becomes unraveled, his world becomes unraveled with his love life and all of that, and he's going to have to end up being the bearer of bad news. And it doesn't matter who he is or who he's becoming. So I want my audience, no matter who they are, to understand that everybody has a different journey. what books are you reading currently? What other authors? You mentioned one. What other authors influence you and inspire you?
Well, he's the biggest influence on me for science fiction. I think this is kind of boring, maybe, but I'm reading a lot of business stuff because I have my own. I'm a project management consultant, so I have my own business, and I'm writing a project management book for entrepreneurs, how to run projects for entrepreneurs. So I'm doing a lot of research for that, and a online workshop that I'm currently promoting that I'm going to be running for entrepreneurs. So my spare time is actually not any type of enjoyment type reading. It's more professional reading right now. And professional like research. So I do get a chance to sit down and write in the sequel of this, which helps me fall out of this world into that world for a little while.
Is your educational background in business or business admin?
Yeah, I have my master's degree in project management, and I'm a certified project management professional through the Project Management Institute. So I have my agile certification and my traditional certification for project management. So this is my alter ego.
Yeah, like mine, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But what other hobbies do you have and interests do you have? Our viewers would love to know.
My biggest hobby and my biggest interest outside of, and actually it's kind of funny, I'm sitting here with a blanket in my lap, is my Harley Davidson. So my Harley is one of my biggest hobbies in riding, and this last summer I was working on the sequel. I went on a 17-day motorcycle trip down through the States, down to the what's called the name kind of just like went away. The Tail of the Dragon. So it's in Tennessee, and it's 311 curves and 11 miles or something like that. It's like it's a famous place where everybody goes and rides. So that was like a big thing I did, and so I was gone for 17 days on the motorcycle, which was really, really nice. Something I've always wanted to do. So that's one of probably my biggest hobby outside of writing is whenever I get a chance, get out on the bike, and it's a very relaxing. You get to think, be in your own thoughts, and besides that, it's just home life. My dogs, my husband. Really, it's about it. Gargoyles. I collect gargoyles. That's the biggest of mine. I've got like 30 some different statues of gargoyles. There's one that I keep on my desk. They kind of they're supposed to ward off evil spirits. I don't know.
Is that the appeal for you? Warding off evil spirits? What else?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I've got 2 gargoyle tattoos. They've always been an interest to me, and I don't quite understand where that came from. One of my first books was almost about gargoyles. It's what I started a book on gargoyles, and it was not a cartoonish type book, but that didn't go very far. Oh. That was one of the ones where I was like, where do I want the story to go? So.
Let me ask you this question, Anthony. As a gay man, prior to writing your book, how did you see the state of LGBTQ characters in fantasy and sci-fi?
It's kind of funny because you can see them and you'll find characters in sci-fi, but they always end up, no offense to the lesbians, but they always end up being lesbians. They have there's this, and you can see, or bisexual women. You very rarely see a man that would either be gay or bisexual in a lead role, or even in a lead supporting role in sci-fi. Well, like I said earlier when we talked about J.K. Rowling announcing that she'd always thought it was Dumbledore being gay, and the backlash that came from that, which there was never any activity or any relationship that they really put in the forefront of that, but everybody seemed to hate it. So it's not something that has ever been just normalized.
Right.
So unless you're like, and I don't know, and this is just straight men seem to like watching two women kiss each other. They always think of the porn. So if you get a bisexual woman in sci-fi, then it's an attraction to straight men to read or to watch on TV. But it can be a turn off to see two men. So there's a double standard.
Yeah, that's interesting. So then, Anthony, how do you define masculinity?
I don't think that there is a right definition of it. I just think, I think it's, people think that if you're masculine, I mean, I don't consider myself very masculine. I don't consider myself feminine. I consider myself me. This is who I am. I don't think that, I think people, if you're masculine, you're, Sons of Anarchy, hypermasculinity. If you've ever watched that show, that's hypermasculinity, womanizing, or, like being like getting into fights or being like aggressive. I don't think you need to be any of those things to be a masculine person. Masculinity is just male in itself. I just don't think it's like how you actually act. So I don't think even two straight guys. I mean, two straight guys giving each other a hug or a kiss on the cheek or whatever. That's great. It's nothing. It doesn't mean that they want to have sex with each other. It doesn't mean that they're gay. It means that they have affection for each other. What's wrong with that? Some people would see that as not very masculine.
So would you say or conceive of masculinity and femininity, or masculine and feminine, as poles?
I would say maybe. No, I mean, I don't even think it's poles, because, there's people, people can have both masculine and feminine traits, and I don't think it's I just think it's, I think it's more, and it's just with all the recent, news and people talking about gender identity, I think masculine and femininity is just a part of everybody. I don't think, if you have a husband that stays home and his wife works and he takes care of the family, do they think he's less masculine because he's not working and because he's not taking care and he's not the breadwinner, which is the norm for society, which is less norm now? So does that make him less masculine? Does that move him towards the feminine pole because he's at home taking care of the kids? Not necessarily. He still may be a hockey player, a weightlifter, and he still may have a Harley or maybe a sport bike, or maybe he just runs and he's still got the. But where does femininity and masculinity fall? Where does that define a person? If you have two people in a relationship, two of the same sex, two men that are in a relationship, if one is what they'd say top and bottom, does the bottom become the feminine one because he's the bottom? Not necessarily. It's it's what they enjoy. Just like if a man and a woman, because the man is like laying in the bed and letting her do the work, does that make him feminine? No.
That's an interesting point. Interesting point.
It just makes him like, that's what they enjoy.
Right.
So I don't think that I don't think it's polar. I just think it is that we all have part of it.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Just switching gears for a moment here, Anthony, could you talk to us a little bit about the writing process? Your writing process.
My writing process is very random. A lot of people will dedicate time to it. I will write constantly for days, and then I will go weeks without writing, because and it's not writer's block. It is more of, I'm at a point, where do I want to go from here? And then I have to think throughout the process. We were in Puerto Vallarta on vacation last April, which is when I finished this. And actually, it seems like when I'm away, I can write more. So I think I need to I should probably just live in Puerto Vallarta on vacation, and I'd probably finish more books.
But that would become home then, and you'd have to move again.
Yeah, well, or just not work. But I would get up in the morning and have coffee and write for 2 hours, 3 hours every day. I actually finished the book there, which I finished it sooner than I planned because that's where I finished it in April of last year. This one I'm on chapter 5 or 6. I'd have to, and I can go, like I said, a couple weeks or days without writing, and then an idea comes in my head, and I just have to get it out. And I have to find out where that leads. I've learned a lot from writing the first book as far as structure, so that also kind of helps me writing in this book, because then I know, instead of writing, sometimes I will write down ideas and then figure out how I want to play it out before I write it. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So then I can go weeks without it, but then sometimes another thing I enjoy, which, I enjoy a good cigar. So I will take and go into my cigar room in the back of the house, turn on the exhaust fan, and just start writing, because I'm like, okay, this is it. And it's just more of okay, I've got to come up. It's like right now, I probably I haven't written for maybe a week and a half or 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. But I had a whole chapter that I had in me that I had to get out, and I got it out, and now I know where I'm at. Now trying to figure out I know what's next. I just got to figure out in my head, how am I going to do it before I put it to paper.
Chapter within you that you have to get out, and then you wait a week and a half, how much variation is there in that expression? If you waited another week, would you have altered it even more? How much variation is there in that expression of what you feel is pent up in you? Does it depend more on your mood? Does it depend if you're sitting in your cigar room with the ventilator on or not on, or in Puerto Vallarta?
Well, no, because there are a lot of times, in the first book, there was a lot of times where I went back and changed, many chapters ahead, because I decided I wanted to go somewhere else. So I would rewrite chapters and input things that would make what I wanted to happen work out, which is horrible for grammar, because then it's sometimes I don't even worry about grammar when I'm writing, because I'm that's what the editors are for. But I will go and rewrite if the story will stay the same, but I'll add things. It's like for Gavin, I will tell you that his mother was much different when I first started writing it than she was when I got towards the end of the book.
What changed in you to create her character differently?
Because I wanted him to be different. And for him to be different, she had to be different. And instead of being, the typical mother, she needed to have her own secrets. So I had to go back and give her secrets.
Okay.
Which you still don't fully discover yet.
Okay. No spoilers. No spoilers. No spoilers.
But there's hints. You just don't. You probably won't get the hints until you find out her secrets.
Okay. And then you're like, oh, well, that makes sense now. It was here all along, right?
Yeah. As long as you remember the first book when you get to the third book.
So you're encouraging binge reading then?
Yeah. Or going back and rereading.
What advice would you give to an aspiring writer?
Just write. Just do it. I think everybody has a story in them. It's just having the courage to actually put that story out there. And even if I know this first book is not the best book anybody's ever going to read. I can guarantee it's not. Just from what I've learned for the second book, my writing style is changing a little bit. How I've organized things are changing a little bit, and I think it's a process. I mean, I do a podcast about project management, and one of the things that I learned about that, everybody said, you know what? Don't worry about the first couple of podcasts. Nobody's going to listen to them anyways, right? So if you don't read this first book and the second book catches your eye and you start reading it, you're like, oh crap, there's a prequel, a book before this. Then you're like, oh, so I have to read this. It's going to be the writing style is a little bit different. How I'm transitioning between scenes is different, just because I've learned that. So when you first start out, just write. You know what? You'll have an editor that will look at it and help you. You'll learn. You'll get better. You'll adjust. I can foresee me maybe going back and rewriting the first book at some point, editing it.
Really?
Yeah. Doing a second edition of it. Not changing the story, but maybe reorganizing it a little bit better.
Would that not alter the style significantly?
No, I think the style could stay the same. I think the story would stay the same. I just think maybe transitioning things a little bit differently. I'm not saying I'm going to do it. I could just, that's my little bit perfectionist.
We won't hold you to it. Yeah.
I'm just saying I could see myself doing it. But it's my first piece of work, and I'm really proud of it, even though I know it could have been better. Now I know it could have been better. There's always room for improvement. So, I mean, if you're writing and you have a story and you just start, it will flow, it will come, it will work out.
Okay. So you mentioned being a perfectionist and the possibility of rewriting your first book, but what are Anthony Pavelich's other writing goals over the short term, next 2 years, next 5 years, next 10 years?
I want to have this series done. The first series, which would be the first 4 books. My project management books, I have 2. I have one in work and I have another one in mind for that. And if we're talking 10 years, I'm hoping by then I'll have the prequel for his father done. His father's name is Colvin, and he's got an interesting story that I want to explore, because the way I've written his story is very mysterious, and I think it's mysterious because at first I wasn't sure what his story was, and I knew he was part of it, but now that I'm elaborating on Gavin, I know what Colvin's story is, but I need to, the basis of his story, and I think it's an interesting story of where he comes from.
Okay, that sounds intriguing. Anthony, is there anything else you would like to add to the interview today? You have the platform.
I just think, like you asked about the advice for aspiring writers. I think everybody has the opportunity to, like I said, share their story. And it may not be in a novel. It may not be in, several novels. It may just be in a blog. It may just be in a poem. I have a friend that does poetry, and his poetry is beautiful, and I've been trying to convince him to publish it because it is so beautifully written and tells a story about him. And it is very therapeutic. Writing, I found, is very therapeutic. It can help you explore yourself as well as the world around you. I think you have to let yourself do that. And I think when you don't let yourself do that, you're not only preventing yourself from growing, but you're also preventing a gift that you could give to the world. Wow,
that's really profound. can we plug your website? Can you tell us your website?
Yeah, again, the website is cruconia.com, cruconia.com. If you order a book from there, you can order. I have a shelf full of copies that I have for that I'll autograph if you want an autographed copy, or you can order it again from Amazon or Kobo and all those. They have the digital version as well as the printed copy.
Wonderful. Anthony, I think we'll wrap up. Thank you very much. It was an honor conducting the interview.
Thank you very much. It was great.
I'm glad you feel that way, and you stay safe during these difficult times.
You too. Social distance. Social distance.
So that's why we're Skyping away here, right?
Exactly.
Thank you again, Anthony, and hopefully we'll meet in person someday.
Hopefully. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Are you a writer? Are you seeking to self-publish high-quality and mass-marketable books? Would you like to avoid the typical low-quality self-published book that generally sells less than 50 copies? Here are top 10 ways Agora will make your book look like a potential bestseller. AgoraPublishing.com services include: Number 1, ISBN registration. 2, cataloging in publication or CIP registration. Number 3, books in print basic for Canada and the US. Number 4, books in print international to get your book sold with online booksellers internationally. Number 5, copy editing for basic grammar and typos. Number 6, substantive editing for style revamping and other consulting. Number 7, typesetting, layout, and graphic design essential for that professional look. Number 8, book cover design. Number 9, book website and author blog design along with search engine optimization, often just called SEO, and also search engine marketing, otherwise known as SEM. 10, AgoraPublishing.com even provides book distribution, agency services, and so much more. So what are you waiting for? Go to AgoraPublishing.com today and find out how they can make you a great selling author. That's AgoraPublishing.com. AgoraPublishing.com.